Hello guys, Joker the Fool here, and this is my overview of Achromatic Chronicles, both blue and green. I did a poll on my YouTube community page asking you guys if you wanted me to review these books separately or do an overview of Achromatic Chronicles in general. The overview won out, so this is going to be an overview of both blue and green. But before we get into that, I'd like to talk about Rip Ascend, as this is the first Rip Ascend project, of course, that being Achromatic Chronicles Green. J. David is also known as Drunk 3PO, if I'm getting that correctly, and his campaign for Achromatic Chronicles Green was the first Rip Ascend project, and I'd say people responded to it pretty positively, even though this book is definitely quite different than what the Ripiverse typically releases. And you've also got the fact that there's going to be a lot of other creators working with Rip Ascend in the near future. Yellow Flash and John Dillard are releasing Mighty Golden Patriot very soon, to my understanding. And I think this is a pretty good first showing from Rip Ascend. Both of these books were printed in Canada. I'm not sure if you can see the small text there, but both these books were printed in Canada. Very high quality. These are glossy soft covers. I only got the standard covers for both blue and green. Absolutely fantastic quality. They were shipped in a Ripiverse mailer, and when I got the email that these were shipped, it was from Ripiverse Comics. So in the long term, Rip Ascend is going to have to get their own Rip Ascend mailers. They're going to have to have shipping out from a Rip Ascend account rather than the Ripiverse Comics account. So in the long term, they're going to have to do more to differentiate themselves, especially as they establish a storefront and they try to be a specialized 3PL for the community of indie comic creators that are in that 5 to 6 figure range, and also having the consumer side where you have this storefront of a ton of comic books to buy. There's going to be a little bit more work is going to be needed done to differentiate Rip Ascend from Ripiverse. But this is, of course, the first project. The company, Ripiverse in general, has only been around since 2022, going on 3 years. So there definitely is a good amount of grace for growing pains, but when this is like, a 5-year thing down the line, that's stuff like that was still happening, then that's where the problems would come. But we're definitely not there yet. This is going off into a tangent. Let's talk about Achromatic Chronicles. So Achromatic Chronicles covers John and Fortuna, with blue focusing on John and green, of course, focusing on Fortuna. And both of these characters live in Glassberry. It is a completely colorless world with only white, black, and gray. And both John and Fortuna are ones that go against the grain. This is a very conformist society. You can't question anything. You can't do anything that you're not supposed to do. Your role is already determined for you. So John is going to work the job that his father works, even though it's not said exactly what he does in the book. It's said that, he has to work the job that his father is working. He's not doing well in school. That's putting his future at jeopardy. He's asking too many questions, so he's not being a good little cog in the machine. And Fortuna is basically his only friend, and she's a little bit more perceived as normal, but still a little bit of an oddball. But they both discover color in the form of these spheres, as you can see. And then with that, they transport to this color world that's very much more fantastical, with like pirates and a queen and all of that. So this is all ages. I would say this is middle school this is late elementary school to middle school. So you're thinking about 3rd to 8th grade, I think, is the basic, is that good age range. These are very dense books, with blue being much more dense than green. So there's a lot of story that goes into here. So we're going to start with blue first, with it being written by J. David. Both of these are written by J. David. Louis Chan and Marianelle Vina are the artists. And I honestly prefer the style of blue more. It's got very much of a manga inspiration, since a lot of this is in black and white because it takes place in this colorless gray world. There's a lot of cues from manga in terms of the lettering, in terms of the facial expressions, as you can see here. And you've also find a better example. So yeah, this is a perfect example of what I mean by the facial expressions being taking big cues from manga, and of course the lettering does as well. Honestly, really like the style of Blue, and Blue is a much longer book than Green, so this has a lot more world building, a lot more characterization of John as well. So there definitely is a lot of value in reading Blue as well as Green. And I'm going to go and show off some of the coloring so you can see there's a good amount of coloring here. These are very bright pages, so you've got, well, that's a little bit of green, of gray there. But these, this is like one of the few 2-page spreads in this book. It's mostly going to be stuff like this, panels and everything. And like I said, it takes a lot of cues from manga, although the coloring is perfectly serviceable in this book as well. The character designs are pretty basic, but they do their job pretty well. It does tell, like I said, a pretty fantastical story towards the middle and the end of it when John goes into Color World. And this is, of course, telling basically the same story of how John and Fortuna meet their respective colors in Blue and Green, and then progress into Color World. And through their knowing of Color World and meeting the colors, they're going to introduce color into Glassberry. And that's basically the end of the book. To get into spoiler territory is where the book ends with the sky turning blue. And that's same for Green. So it's covering basically the same point in the story. It's basically the same story. It's just being tackled from 2 different perspectives. Of course, Blue covers John, and like I said, there's a lot more world building and characterization in Blue just because of how much thicker it is. Again, to compare the width of these books, there's a lot more pages in Blue than there is Green. So Green, we'll get into that next, is definitely much more of a narrative that centers around Fortuna. And not to say that there's no world building or no characterization, it's just that Blue feels much more like it's establishing everything, and Green is just filling in the blanks and giving the readers of Blue more information than they had that they didn't have because they didn't see things from Fortuna's perspective. So this book covers Fortuna's perspective of the story of Blue, and it ends at that same point, which again is with the sky turning blue. As you can see right there, the sky is blue. And the character designs do change a little bit. They're still recognizable. I think Eric Hodgson is the artist. I think his layouts are absolutely fantastic. The shading of this is absolutely wonderful, but some of the faces do look awkward. I think most of the time, the faces and the characters look good. John, this is John. If we can get a comparison between how John looks here. So this is John in Blue, this is John in Green. So the character designs do change between books because you've got 2 different artists working on this. So it doesn't feel as consistent, which is a little bit jarring, but everything does make sense. It looks pretty good. It's a good reading experience. The lettering is done well, and Eric Hodgson does offer a good visual experience with this book. I definitely say, especially with the lettering is better in Green than Blue, because you've got the green lettering when Green is speaking, you've got blue lettering when Blue is speaking, and of course you've got these fantastical panel layouts when you get into scenes with color as well. So it does really do a good job at shifting the tone with the way the panels are laid out, the way the colors are rendered, and of course some of the faces, like I said, sometimes Fortuna's face looks awkward in a couple of panels, but most of the time it looks pretty good. It's a solid reading experience. This isn't really anything that I think is going to be knocking your socks off, because this is an all ages book, so the themes aren't mature or super deep, although there definitely is that, I want to say generic, but there is that classic timeless theme of the coming of age story where the main characters are trying to figure out their place in society and definitely are not accepted by society, and they want a change, and they find that change. And of course, it's probably tying in with the classic hero's journey as well, with the mythical and fantastical aspects of the story, where you've got the teleportation to Color World, where it's a realm of color from a realm that has no color. And while I'd say these stories mostly slot together pretty well, the name of Color World is established in Blue, and the way it's established in Blue, it doesn't seem like it's the way it was established in Green, because in Blue they call the realm that Blue calls the realm that Blue is from home. And then John names it Color World, and then when Fortuna is in Color World, the Queen just calls it that, and she never says anything. But that is the only big thing in terms of the world building and the plot consistency between these two books, because like I said, these two books, they tell the same story just from the perspective of two different characters, so they overlap with each other. And the way that they do that for the big things is actually really nice and slots together pretty well. But these stories are definitely really dense, because there's a lot of pages, there's a decent amount of stuff that goes on, and this is a fantastic setup for a sequel that continues from the perspective of both John and Fortuna. So we have an Achromatic Chronicles yellow or red or, I don't know, purple, whatever color Jay thinks is next to cover, then that would pick up from where both Green and Blue end in the story, and then it's from both the perspective of both of these two characters, because I think they've got good chemistry in how they interact with each other. I think they are interesting, and I definitely think the premise is interesting, even if it's riffing on themes or motifs, I should say, that have been done before. I think Jay does it pretty well and makes a pretty enjoyable experience, whether you're young or you're old. I'm 26. I definitely got value from this story, but like I said, I think this is definitely really good if you're getting this for kids. If you've got a kid in between like 3rd and 8th grade, so I'd say probably about like 8 to 14 is going to be the best range. You know, anything older, you're going to want to go to more mature stuff, and anything younger, you might not have the attention span to take in all of this story, because it is quite a dense story, especially when you combine both Blue and Green. You can read either one of these on their own and get a good experience out of them, but if you read both of them, then you get a very complete narrative that is a setup for future installments of Achromatic Chronicles, which I hope come soon, because this is a very interesting and intriguing story. And again, regardless of whatever age you are, I think that's going to remain true. But that's all I have to say about Achromatic Chronicles. Hopefully you enjoyed this overview. Joker is out.